Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I need to confess something that I almost did. I almost slept on this, man. I almost did. But thankfully, word has gotten out that this is pretty great. So, I'm here to gush about Eternal Strands. I've been playing for about 5 hours, which is about halfway through the game according to the Xbox app and time to beat. So it's a pretty bite-sized RPG falling in about the 11-hour mark, which really isn't to its detriment because it never really has time to get old or stale. The game was also helmed by people from both BioWare of old and Ubisoft of all places. Helmed by the creative director Mike Laidlaw. And if you're wondering, okay, cool, who's that? He was the previous game director on the Dragon Age franchise. Oh man, could they have used his talent recently. But enough of the who's and the what's of how it was made. Let's talk the game.
Thanks. Bryn, over here.
Our main character, Bryn, is a weaver, a magical warrior of sorts that can use many different powers throughout the land to conquer many different enemies and obstacles. Throughout the world's history, tragedy has struck this world, and because of this, magic has been outlawed in a lot of places. So weavers can't really stick around for too long as their presence is frowned upon. One day while exploring the border of the Veil, the barrier that protects their home and the Enclave, the group runs into an Ark, an old tool of a bygone civilization, much like a robot. And while they are trying to inspect it, the group is attacked by a Drake and forced to flee at the end of their battle. But not on their own, as the Ark springs to life and guides them through the darkness into a new land that hasn't been touched by anyone in a long time. This is where you get to play with a little more of your combat sandbox, albeit after a little more of the tutorial phase and a little exploration to find some upgrades here and there. But that's where the game shines. It's so fun to explore these areas and experiment with your powers. Your powers come in many different shapes and sizes too. You start with telekinesis and a freeze power that you can just spray enemies to immobilize them in different ways. Some with hot bugs that you can just freeze out of the air, or you can freeze giant enemies to the ground so they can't move anymore. Your main means of combating your way through this world are your sword and shield, your bow, and some other two-handed weapons that I haven't gotten to yet. These aren't the most complicated or in-depth weapons to use so far, owing to their kind of single input style where tapping is your quick attacks and holding is your heavy attacks. But combat still manages to feel very good, and I almost enjoy every engagement I come across. And speaking of engagements, there is a fair bit of enemy variety in the game between small fodder, larger enemies from them, mini bosses, and then Colossus style enemies that I mentioned earlier. Each one of these enemies also having a kind of tactic that takes them down most efficiently. Combat can feel a little stiff at times, but with the addition of a parry and a little practice with a little unruly camera, it can feel very good, especially the parry that has a very satisfying ping when you counter. And when you've had your fill of the slaughter, you can head on back to engage with your camp and a social activity of sorts. Get to know your more interesting side characters that are really well voice acted and written, which, in light of recent releases, is a breath of fresh air on its own. Your camp can also be upgraded as you collect resources. Taking your friends' tools to another level means doing the same for yourself, with you being able to upgrade and change not only your powers, but your gear, and even how your gear is made, and what your gear is made with. Owing to a simple but flexible reforging system that lets you rebuild your armor with better materials to better your stats against the elements, or just hit a lot harder. This system is pretty flexible so far, but like I said, I'm in the early stages of the game. But it really makes it exciting when you take down larger and larger enemies and get better, like basically loot drops, but they're crafting materials, right? You take them back to camp and use those, and it's so exciting using those to put on your armor because they give you these giant stat boosts. A really enjoyable system, even if it's not like anything crazy or crazy new, it just works very well. Overall, I really love how these systems play into each other in this little bite-sized RPG from, I don't think I named the studio, Yellow Brick Studios. I just had to gush over this little title just for a little bit because I believe it's a good breath of fresh air. Not even just for me, but just for most people who feel like their gaming style or life has gotten a little stale over the time, a little samey. It deserves your attention, and honestly, it deserves to succeed. So if you have Game Pass, go and try it out because it's on there. If not, it's not super expensive. It comes in at a whopping $40 in comparison to a lot of $70 releases that come in around the same amount of hours and haven't even been as good lately. It's a pretty good deal. So let me know your thoughts on it if you've tried it, because I am completely shocked at how much fun I'm having, because it doesn't even seem at first look or even first impression that it would be just as addicting as it is, but everything comes together so nicely, and I really hope this team makes it another game in this, like an Eternal Strands 2, if this has an ending that would support that, or another game that takes the ideas in this game a bit further in the future. Anyways, thanks for coming by and hearing me rant and rave about my newest little obsession. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Subscribe if you want to hear more about games coming out and what I've been doing. Like if you enjoyed this video. And I will talk to everyone later. Peace.